Hello, hello, hello. Is this streaming? Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this, what does that mean? That means you're watching the stream and it's actually working, which is a very rare thing because for some reason my computer has decided to shit itself. Not to worry, though. Not to worry. We're here. And what it looks like it's going to be is it looks like it's going to be a podcast of just my screen. No faces. So there's that. But we're going to press on. We're going to press on. So if you can hear me. Yeah, thank you, Blue 4. Delta. You like the podcast? That's good. Paul's a fucking cool dude, isn't he? I would imagine Paul is as close as you can get to the listeners of this podcast in terms of age and people that are hungry and looking to do some cool shit. Okay, let me get this set up here. I'm going to stop for a second and then I'll come back. I'm just going to look at all the photos. So actually, if you're listening to this, the project that we're going to be looking at today, lots of good stuff. Thank you if you sent it all in. The project that we're going to be looking at is from Weston Walker. And I chose this one for a bunch of different reasons, but there were some really cool ones this week. So many thanks. And again, just keep sending them in if you didn't get picked this week. And I'm going to try and get to them. So never fear, good people. Let's just quit all of our shitty programs and bring that up. And let's see. Okay. So give me 2 minutes here, and then we're going to give it a go. Introduce yourselves in the chat if you are listening. Wes Walker, Weston, if you're out there, let everybody know what this project is. I believe it's called Timeless. And that's it, yeah. If you're new to the YouTube chat, if you're a new Patreon member, the easiest thing to do for me to see this is to use the YouTube chat. Don't use the chat on... You, Weston. Okay, lay it down, Weston, while I cut and paste these images from your little commercial here. Okay, everybody. Shabba-dee-ba. Am I on? Is the microphone on? It's hard to check because I only have one screen today. Okay. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize about the situation here. We are 24 minutes late today. And it is all because my computer decided to shit itself and is not taking the feed from the Alexa. I can't figure out if it's a frame rate thing. I can't figure out if it is I don't know if it's the actual little box that reads into the camera, but I can't do it. So unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the live stream today is just going to be my screen here. And today we are looking at Weston Walker's project. This is for some sort of watch company. Weston, if you're out there, please lay it down. A personal project that we threw together with the support of Nimia Stock Agency, Red, Freefly, Bright Tangerine, and Schneider. Not a bad few companies there to be supporting. It'd be interesting to hear how, you say it's a personal project, it'd be interesting, I'm sure people in the chat would be interested to hear how you get these companies on board. Like, how do you actually go about creating this narrative spot piece? Anyway, we're going to push on with the live stream. Weston, you just lay it down in the corner there, what you shot on, how much time you had, and the idea. I'll flick through the images now so that everyone can participate. Did everybody check out Paul's work just before we get into this thing? Paul, the guy who was on the main podcast this week, super friendly guy, and just as I said, I sort of jokingly said it in the podcast, but man, the dude is like 18, maybe, and just hungry, and he has got the system down. And there's nothing, everyone's got this, everyone's playing inside this little sandbox, and he's just got it very focused. And it's not limited to just him. I'm sure everyone does it. I'm pretty much the same way, but he's me, just a lot younger and probably better, is crafting your image and molding your little professional little niche, and then maximizing the projects that you do have, and really selling yourself to get into that situation where you can get some commercials on your reel. Very cool. So hopefully you guys have listened to that big podcast, because I think it's one where, coming up, I don't know if it's going to be next week's a breakdown episode, but the week after will probably be Denny Lenoir, who, if you don't know Denny Lenoir, he's about 70. He's a French cinematographer. He's in the ASC. The nicest guy in the history of the world. He's the guy that ended up getting us over to the ASC Clubhouse while we were in the States, while we were in LA for the podcast, and we got to interview a whole bunch of and meet a whole bunch of ASC members, which is fun, but just completely different worlds. He's not going to have near the stories, or his stories are going to come from a completely different vantage point. So, okay, Weston, here we go. We wanted to tell a cool story while showcasing some rad gear, pushing some new techniques, and creating a narrative commercial for Rolex. Leveraging those NAB connections. Now, there's something for you. NAB. Face-to-face connections, where you go and you actually meet people in the real world, and then you can call them and say, hey, can I use some of your gear? It's interesting. I like it. I like the idea. I mean, you still got to get out there and make those connections, and then you got to be able to pull the trigger. Shot over 2 evenings. First was 3 hours boat stuff, and the second was about 5 hours in the shop with the father-daughter. Shot on the Gemini. Okay, I will tell you this, because this is now off of the big podcast. This commercial that I shot in Los Angeles on the DXL2. The color, everything else is cool, but the color that Light Iron has got, this LUT, it is amazing. And I don't want to say that from a point of view where, it's one of those things where you couldn't replicate it if you tried. I could tell you exactly what we did, but the tools, the look comes from, fucking text message. The look comes from the gear. That is 100% a fact. I didn't change anything. I didn't do anything different. I didn't light it any other way that I would light it. I'm just using, this is the pinnacle of making shit look good. That's it. That all it is the gear. And people say, well, the gear doesn't matter. The gear doesn't matter. Horse shit. You want your stuff to look like a fucking movie? Like a movie that I didn't think you could get images like this. I didn't think that I could. I mean, I'd seen them before. But you turn the thing on, and the color was better than in the real world. And when I say better, it felt more like I would want it to feel, if that makes sense. It didn't look any different. It just looked like how I wanted it to feel. How I didn't even know that I wanted it to feel. I just turned on the camera, and we're looking at it. And it helps that I'm shooting models downtown in Los Angeles at sunset. That's something, right? It's not super fucking hard. And I've mentioned this on the podcast before too. Cinematography is very paradoxical in that as you get better, everyone else around you gets better. The gear that you use gets better. The amount of tools that you have, the access to time that you have gets better. All of those things get better as you progress. So it actually gets significantly easier to do the job. You don't have to worry about as much shit. You're not a one-man band running around trying to put up a 4x4 floppy and trying to put up a little bit of diffusion. There's people around you that are skilled that you don't even have to tell to do that. Then, and this really is, I think you're going to see when we share these results, I think you're going to see that at a certain level, it is about the gear. There is no fucking two ways about it. You cannot get this look. I have never been able to achieve this look before. I've been doing this now. I was counting, actually, because I'm up for a few different jobs at the moment, and they're all food jobs, and they're all light and bright jobs. And if you go on my website now, I've pared it back significantly. But on my website, I have little areas where I keep for certain things. These commercials go to that. If you're looking for this, you go there. And so I've had to churn out all these little food things so that people can see that I can do other looks besides the stuff that I like, just to make some cash. And I think I counted 111 commercials are on my website. 111 times I've done this. So I have somewhat of an expectation of what's going to happen when we turn on the camera. Red, I shot a shit ton of Red stuff. I shot a shit ton of Alexa stuff. I've shot a lot of stuff, a lot of days. And I've never seen this before. I've never seen it. I've never been more excited about something, looking at it going, what can we shoot next? What direction do we point? And you're going to see the images, and you're going to see them online, I'm sure. And I'm going to have a podcast about it. You're going to be like, yeah, Patrick, I guess it looks okay. It looks fine. And I'll probably say the same thing. But you got to look at it. I've played with these things on the showroom floor. I played with the 65 in a demo, I had a day all to myself. It's something. But this light iron color, this LUT, that I don't know if you're supposed to have it, but if you shoot with the DXL2, you end up getting it because you have to look at dailies and you have to do these things. So I don't know if it applies to the Monstro thing and you just put this LUT on, or if they're doing something in front of the camera like with the OLPF. I don't know. But the LUT, essentially, I don't know if Panavision will want me sharing this. Whatever. The LUT, it boosts the signal significantly. Significantly boosting the signal. Like, I'm talking 2 stops. So they recommend that the native ISO on the camera is 1600. The boosted LUT basically makes it, maybe it's not 2 stops. Maybe it's just a stop. 3200 ISO. It's impossible to get anywhere near clipping this thing. You can't, you would have to be so far off. The image would have to look so dog shit in the monitor. You would have to be purposely trying to fuck this thing up to clip it. So much range. And the color is so deep. Anyway, that's for another day. Okay, Peter, what do you think of Steve Yedlin's display prep demo? I think it's very smart. Steve's very smart, and the guy knows his shit. And if you want to learn some stuff, you watch it, and then you go, yep, that's great that I know all this stuff. I still have to get out and make good shit. But that's what we're talking about. That's like that last 1% or that last 5%. Steve's got such a great background. He's got such a great eye. And you just get up to that top level and what do you got? No more fucking room to squeeze shit out of the image. And then bam. Panavision comes out with a fucking camera like this and you're like, holy fuck. There is more room at the top. Like there's another level to this. So that's what I think. Okay, let's get into this. Here we go. We are looking at, what are we looking at? We're looking at a woman here and she is about to get on this boat. And this is on the red. We're in a boat factory. We're doing boat things. We get out here. We're crying. Whoop. See daisies. Okay. So that's what we're looking at. This is the project. Now, let's get into it, shall we? What are we going to say here? First things up. Let's start with the good. Actually, this shot is pretty much all good. Number one, Weston, I don't know if it was you or Ty or whoever's doing this, but this is fucking crispy sharp. Like, very, very sharp. And I would guess, if you're shooting on square fronts, because I just spent the week on square fronts, that this is going to be the 50 mil, and this is going to be a +1 diopter, or a half diopter. I don't think you can get this close on the 50 on the square fronts without a little bit of help from a diopter, which in turn makes the image sharper. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I would say this is the 50 mil with a half. So good things. Let's talk lighting. Boosh. Sun. What looks to be high cloud over here. Edge, which is good. Shooting into shadow, which is fantastic. Dark. Light. dark, light, all those things are good. Composition in the background, all good, right? I don't know how many people you had to help you out here, but I spent the entire week putting up neg everywhere, and it doesn't feel like there's neg here, but judging by that contrast ratio, either there's full sun out here, and you've got no neg, or there is some neg. But this is a great frame, right? You got the darkness of the boat, you've got the little highlight hitting her. I would say, okay, we're here. Let's say we're here with a big crew. Let's say we're here with 3 in the lighting and 3 in the grip, and you've got ample time to do whatever. My first thought here would be this edge is a little bit hot and this side is a little bit lifted. So these are not negative comments. These are more, how can we just get that last 1% out of it? Because I'd be happy with this. I'd look at it and go, ooh, I'd probably say that's a little bit hot over on that far edge. But I'd be like, okay, we got a good angle here. We got the light in the right spot. We got the boat lined up in the right spot. We're here at the right time of day. All things that could have easily been fucked up. You imagine, you're doing the schedule and you decide to be here when the sun is over here and it's just blasting right in the front of her face. So you've done well there. But here I would say, depends on how much she's moving, but let's be safe and let's go with the mid-budget version. What's a mid-budget version of this shot is probably a 6x6 or an 8x8 frame of half soft frost, or my preferred would be highlight. Half soft frost seems to be incredibly popular in Los Angeles. Highlight, much more popular here in Australia to do these kinds of jobs. So I would probably say, because you're not seeing the sun and you're not seeing too much up, right? You could sort of tilt down and lose a little bit of that sky and get away with it. But I would say 8x8 of highlight or half soft frost, take the edge off of that. Now, what happens when you take the edge off of that? What are the dangers when you lose level here? Well, that raises the level in the background, right? Because you're balancing the two out. So to get around that, you need to be shooting into something like this, where you need to be shooting into backlight so it's already dark. And here, you're not crazy. You're not going to see it a crazy amount because you're shooting into this gray sky. So I would say highlight or half soft frost will probably knock, 3/4 of a stop out of that. Now, if we knock 3/4 of a stop, let's just use a stop as an example. In here, we knock out a stop on this key side because we're highlighting or half soft frosting the sun. What's going to happen is the contrast is going to get way less because we're not really affecting the bounce side. So it's going to start to even out, and we don't want that. So then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to come in hot with, probably to get any effectiveness out of it, depending on the size of the shot, speed. If we're still in this mid-budget level, I would go 2 4x4 floppies, and I would have the floppies down like this, have the flop side vertical, and have the rigid side hanging over. I would do that like this, and I would just create an 8x8 out of the 2 floppies, hang them over here just to create some contrast. And then, as always, with the floppies, what you want to do is this close one, you probably want to keep floppied over like that. This one, as you flop it over like that, you're going to open it up this way, away from the talent, so that this close end, this is close to the talent, and the far side edge, you just open that up so it lets a little bit of light in. And what's going to happen is you're going to get darkness where you want it. And then what you're doing by opening it up is just allowing a little bit of light, as much as you want really, to create another edge over here. It's just a really easy way to get simple shape. It's just open up that backside edge. And a lot of the times, this is where you really have to fight the crew. A lot of the times, you say, oh, let's get 2 4x4 floppies, we'll bring them in here, we'll hang them over, and people start to bring them in, and they don't, it's all about the placement of the neg. If you're a foot off, it can look like shit, or it could look better. It's not gonna look like shit, but it could look significantly better if you just a little half foot that way, half foot that way. And that really is where, when you're working with the crew, you got to be, you can be friendly, but also when the crunch time comes, it's like, oh, no, you got to move it over here. Sometimes you just got to fucking pick it up and do it yourself. But I would say this is good angle, good contrast there. If you've kept the hot sun, you're moving quickly. 100%, I understand. Here we go. Now, this one, a little bit trickier. right? Because you've got overcast sky, you got no direct sun, and what happens is we've gone from this is the nice stuff here, this crunchy contrast. This is what makes things interesting. You've got the various levels, you got color, you got shape, you got contrast. We come here, is not as much contrast. So what could we do? Oh, do you want to do should we do the big budget version of this shot, or everyone sort of understands it? Should we do, I think everybody gets it, right? The big budget version would just be everything larger. Not hard. It would be, if you were setting this shot up and you had a bunch of stuff to do in this area and you had cash, it would be fly swatter, 20 by, highlight, 20 by negs. It's just bigger. And what bigger is going to allow you to do is you just have much more control than you do in your little 8x8s. And say okay, we know we're going to get this shot and we got the cash. We know we're going to get this shot, but maybe we want to do other things inside of that space. Bigger just allows the director to do more and to have more options. Because if you have your little 4x4 floppies and all of a sudden the director says, well, let's pull out and let's do one a little bit bigger just to get the scope of the thing. And you're thinking to yourself, well, fuck me. I got 2 4x4 floppies. That's not going to do much if they're 15 feet away. That's when you need the bigger things. So have that conversation early on with the director. Say, listen, this is what we can do with the budget, but if we want to do something different, we're going to need bigger tools. And then you talk to the producer and you get them on board. That is how you get around it. Okay, as I say, what you'll immediately notice, if we look at the little baby histogram, significantly less contrast variance here. And the flatness is most evident here. I would say, okay, what can we do to make this thing better? Is we just need to find a way to get an edge here. And you can do that a few different ways. You could, I don't know if you have the ability to rotate the boat, but you could follow the sun around. It looked like the sun was booking to the other side of the boat in the previous shot. Or you just black the shit out of down here. All down here and all over here, you just black. Because when you're setting exposure, all you're doing is setting it relative to the ratios. That is what exposure is. You're just setting things to say, okay, where does everything else sit? So what you would do is, say you're going off false color. You set your exposure to this top area and say you're working on the Alexa or you're working on the red. You set this to, say, 45 or 40 IRE in there. And then here, now that we've set that, you leave the camera and you say, okay, how can we get less level everywhere else? Well, you just bring in blacks on this side of the camera, bring in blacks underneath the camera, and you just completely black it off. And what that's going to do is that's going to soak up all this shitty light from down below, all of this filled in bit. It's going to suck that up and just create some shape. It won't affect over here. It won't affect what's coming from above. You're just sucking it up. And in those overcast or high cloud situations, neg does become the most important thing, right? You really have to punch it in there to get any sort of contrast. So, nice frame, nice leading line down here as this goes. She's dragging her hand. This is sort of like the, your classic gladiator wheat shot, the hand dragging along the thing. I get it. This is nice, this little highlighted area. Let's just try and snag a little bit of shape out of it. Just get that little bit more of interest. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here we go. This is aerial stuff. And you think, well, how does lighting apply to the aerial stuff? This is almost in line with the last live stream. Is you have to know the principles. As soon as you know these things, it all becomes easy. All the choices become really easy. I had a couple conversations with the director this week on this job where I don't even have to think about it anymore because I know what's going to look like shit because I know the principles. It's like, well, we've got this area, we want to look this way. So yeah, you can look that way. It's going to look like ass though. And here's why. Because if this was front lit, it would look like complete dog shit, people. We'll change this up. So we'll go this to sunshine. Imagine the light over here. Imagine you get this super hot water and then you get this all front lit and then it slowly gets darker over there. There's no shape to it. There's no interest. The interest comes from the contrast. The variance is what we're after. We don't want flatness. We're fighting flatness till the end. And this is, it's a fairly plain shot, right? It's water. But you could easily fuck this up. And on the flip side, you could easily make it good. And Weston has done a good job of making this shot good. He's got, well, the composition's good. You know, you got your little grid there, lined them up in the right spot. You got this nice leading line down. The camera's moving this way. All that stuff is good. Weston, I don't know if you posted a link to the final ad or spec ad in Vimeo, but do it, and so people can check it out. This is really good, but this is just the principle. Oh, we just need backlit. Okay, that's one part of the principle. The question is, where do we want the light to come from? The sun. Well, I know. First answer is backlit. There you go. We got one tick. Tick. We already know we're looking pretty good. Hold on. I'm just reading Mike's comment here. We got sun over here. What's the next thing that will make a shot look good? Is it high sun? Is it low sun? Well, low sun, the shot's going to look nicer. Oh, tick. Double tick. Now we know. Now we've established the time of day that we got to be here. We've established the direction that we have to be going, especially on a boat. It's not like a road. Boat, you can fucking go any direction you want. So you might as well know the principles and then apply them. So this is a really... I like this because it's the epitome of knowing the principles. You just have to know a few simple rules, and then you line up and you expose properly. You expose where you want the shadows, where you want the levels, and then you take it away from there. Okay, Mike, I know it totally depends on the look and feel you're going for, but where do you tend to find yourself liking Quayside skin tones to fall in terms of IRE? I will tell you on Flanders. On a Flanders, I don't remember what it is in IRE. I can't remember if the Flanders scale is IRE or if they've made up their own. It probably is IRE. I set the gray, so the part that you can manipulate and manually set on the Flanders, I set it between 40 and 50 IRE. And that will be my Quayside, and then everything else falls off. That's just for normal stuff. Sometimes 45 to 55, but generally in that zone. But I use it more as a reference to know, okay, where is that middle of the image? I don't always line the skin tones up there, but 40 to 50 would be my general. On Alexa, that's shooting 800, I would say, in that area. And, you know, for nighttime scenes and stuff. The Alexa, if I'm shooting with the Alexa, which has a much more basic false color system and reading of IRE, but I go for the zone between the pink and the green for just normal Quayside. In between the green bit and the pink bit. The pink bit is way too hot, and sometimes I go full green. It just depends. The Alexa, a lot like the Panavision, ladies and gents, which ISO 1600, already a stop above the base ISO, and then the LUT pushes it another stop. So pushing really does bring out, there's something about the colors as you underexpose the Alexa and the Monstro. There's something that happens to the color that looks better. And I think we've established that as a fact. Okay. That's that. Next one. Let's go. Here we are. Now, this appears to be clipped. That's the first thing that draws my mind. That draws my eye. It appears to be clipped. Either that or the fall off on the highlights is not as soft as I would go for. But this is tricky because you probably don't have a lot of level because of the overcast sky. And what's peeking through the overcast sky is going to be full sun. So it's going to be super hot. So you're trying to get, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to get enough level on the face to bring them up. So what ends up happening is you just clip that very top edge, right? Which is very, you know, it can be tricky to avoid, but that's where cranking up the ISO will help you. You know, somebody wrote in, one of the questions before we started here was, can we do an episode about that ISO, shooting high ISO at in brighter situations or low ISOs in darker situations? This would be an example of wanting to shoot at a higher ISO. So say instead of shooting this at 800, you shot this at 1600. You're looking in the monitor, you're not using a light meter. 1600 is going to look brighter to your eye, so you're going to expose down, either putting in ND or stopping down, and that's going to help save those last little bits that are just clipping around here. Now let's talk about the light and the shape. Again, you've done good in terms of direction. You've got the sun is back here somewhere underneath the horizon. It's coming this way. It's not really peeking through and adding anything, so that's why you've had to lift in here. You can see this is all lifted in there. But in this situation, if it was this particular lighting, what I would like to see is if we just rotated the boat just a little bit, and instead of using, because there's not really any, we're not getting enough level from the sun to catch that edge light, I think what we would do is we just rotate it a little bit. We use whatever ambient is coming, or whatever direction is coming from the sun, as a little edge, as a little side light. You 4x4 bounce to wrap the side light, and then you leave the rest to fall off. And I only say you leave the rest to fall off because you're probably on a real small boat and you don't have tons and tons of area for 4x bounce, 4x floppy. But I would say just to get a little bit of interest in here, rather than going completely backlit, because what you have now in complete backlit is you're just working off of the ambient here for her. I don't see any, what's happens if we go in? I don't see any, I see you, but I don't see any bounce reflections in her eyes. So I'm imagining that you are going with just ambient and then lifting her up. I would say if we just rotate her around, remind me later, just rotate her around a little bit, use everything that we can possibly get from the sun, and then wrap around with a poly. I think that would get us just a little bit more shape, because what ends up happening here is, you know, across the face, you've got essentially the same level. And then this is nice, you know, background is nice. The sky is nice except for the clipping bits in terms of ratios, how we would want it to be. But what we would like to see, what I would like to see, I'm speaking in plural terms, is give me something in here. Give me this bit shaped up as it is, and then the rest of it, let's drop it down to that level. You know what I'm saying? And I think you could accomplish that by just rotating the boat slightly, because you are getting a little bit of level. What am I doing here? You are getting a little bit of level off. You know, you're getting a little bit of direction. We just can't see that level because it's not enough to punch through her hair. So maybe it would be enough to be like off that reflective little cheek. You see that thing? If we just rotate it around, I think you'd be able to catch that. Okay, let's go to the next one. Here we go. This is actually a trick that I used myself yesterday. And we were in this big shipbuilding warehouse, and it was a job out of a van, the gaffer. We had a generator, a big ass generator, but we just had a little tiny van, and the biggest thing we had in there was an M40. We didn't have the amount of lights or the resources or the time to completely light up this giant shipbuilding cargo bay. And so an easy way to make some interest is to fucking just fire something straight down the lens. And then the rest you can sort of fill in, but it takes care of so much of the frame. So I like this little trick, Weston. You've done very well here. Not only do you get the interest of the frame, but also you got the direction right. You know, you're shooting into the light, which creates this. This is what we're looking for. These little pops of interest. This thing, cool. Then, I mean, that is great. But then this is what makes it. This area here is what makes this cool. That little contrasty difference. Then you got that little light coming in there. That's interesting. The angle is good. They're working on this boat. They're putting some engine in. Then we got the watch on. This is a cool spec thing too, because, and a very good idea for a spec relative to the Patreon group, because other people are looking to do this exact same thing. You want something for your reel? You got a fuckload of good stuff in here for your reel. If you're going to look to take out, as we always say, you know, you take out 3 clips from this and you make a little subsequence inside of your reel sequence. You got some really good stuff to choose from. And the idea and the premise and the amount of people in this ad shows. You know, you got the one woman, she's on a boat. That doesn't take much. You got 2 people in this little garage scenario, which, if we flick through it, you know, it's quite contained, but it looks cool. You know, you put that in a reel with a bunch of other shit, and, you know, you're laughing about what you've come away with here. So I think from a production perspective, a really good job of coming up with something that you can make look awesome for not a lot of cash. So here again, you know, this is good. The one thing that I would probably say would be, if I was in here, I would say, let's lose this. We're going to lose this light. Let's can that altogether. This one we can keep. We'll keep this little backy edge light. will definitely keep this flashlight. But what I would do is come over the top. I would take whatever's doing this, and I would come more vertical with it. And I'd probably put it up here above the engine. And then I want the light coming this way, coming down this way. So taking what that flare is doing, and then just softly just washing it over the hand, you know, because you got the harshness. A lot of the times it's balancing a hard light with then the softness of a wrap. So which you're sort of doing here. You know, you got harsh, and then see, this light is not harsh. And that's probably coming from whatever you've got planted over here. But it just feels filled in. And that could be because of the contrast, the flare in the lens. But it just feels a little bit milky there. So what I would say is juice up there, something a little bit softer on a much lower level, and then neg the shit out of below the camera and behind the camera. I mean, that is the first thing that I do in every spot. The first thing, no matter what location we're doing, talk to the grips, and they're immediately going to say, key grip's going to say, okay, what are we looking at doing here? So, well, 12 by 12 behind the camera. That's it. 12 by 12 behind the camera. We don't give a fuck about anything coming from this way. We don't want any of it. We want to be able to dictate exactly how much contrast we put in there. So that just goes everywhere. Everywhere. 12 by 12 neg behind the camera. If it can't fit, 8 by. If it can't fit, T-bar, 6 by. I would say that's where you would start. Okay. What do we got here? Mike Kurian. When you said 40 to 45 IRE earlier, are you meaning with the Rec 709 applied or in log C? Always in Rec 709. Log C is just for checking. Every television thing is going to be in 709. 709 is what everyone is going to view in, and if it's not 709, all the LUTs are based off of those readings. So that's really all you have to worry about. Log C, the only time I'm checking, I mean, I have a workflow on every single shot. I do it less and less now, but if I was going to have a workflow, I would say light it up until it looks good, knowing the principles that we've talked about in the premises and looking for that key side light. Start with the key or the light that you can't control, set the level off of that. Then I go into the false color, whether if it's Alexa, I'm just flicking on the Alexa false color. If I've got a Flanders monitor, I'll flick that on, and I'll set whatever I'm looking at, either the thing I can't control, like the sun, I'll set that the camera to that level, and then push in all of the other little bits and pieces. But I'm only looking at log C if something looks to be clipping that I can't control, and then I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with it. So log C, when I flip over, after I've set everything inside of Rec 709 in false color, I'll flop over to RAW just quickly to check to make sure that nothing is clipping in that RAW. If anything is red or yellow on the Alexa, if anything is red or yellow in the Rec 709 false color, I'll just switch over and make sure it's not red or yellow in the log C. But that's really it. Okay, Weston. In hindsight, I'd do just what you said and add a more top-down backlight. I think it would help more practical. Yeah, I would agree. What was that over here? Do you remember? And what was that backlight? Because that's nice. That's got a nice little ping to it. But what were you using for lights? And are you setting these up for yourself, or you got somebody helping you? Okay, let's go to the next one. Here we go. This is also where, and this is becoming more and more a thing, I think, in the last year or two, of just what you just said there about setting up something that looks more real, more like a practical shop lamp. You want to go practical as much as you can. You want to say, what would be in this space? Because it just makes everything easier. And of course, if you remember the principles, then you really can't go wrong with that practical shop light look. What would happen if we did have a top ear down source here that we used in the previous shot? You'd lose all of this stuff. You'd lose all of that stuff, which we don't want anyway, right? We don't want any lights coming from the front when we're looking, especially in wide shots. Wide shots light from the front is a very, I would think to myself, what have I done wrong? How have I gotten myself into the situation where I need this? What could I do to avoid? I mean, every time we go into a location, every time I go into a location scout or a tech scout, I'm thinking, how do I avoid putting front light or putting front bounce in a wide shot? Because I always end up regretting it. Always. I always think, man, fuck it. Doesn't look like I thought it would look. So in this situation, we've got some light, like all the contrast on our gal. This edge is awesome. But then you've got all of this filled in, which feels like it's coming from over here. Yeah. Yeah, that is a bummer when you don't have the gear. Yeah, this is, you got that. This is cool. This little light on him is cool. And you can imagine if you had something extra up here and it was just washing, gently washing over this thing, creating shadow all through here, all of this shadow, all of this shadow. You know, then you start to get some interest, and then you set the level. And what would help here, I don't know if that is flare atmosphere or if it's actually atmosphere, but this is, man, garage is like the perfect excuse for atmosphere. Take a little bit of that blacky crunch out of the grade, just fucking haze the shit out of it. Patrick, you wouldn't backlight with a front bounce to bring up fill at all? No. That's just, that's like a mini sun sandwich. No. Filling, you gotta fill wrap is the term. You gotta wrap, you gotta fill from the key side. So in this situation, or that's how you think about it. That's in practical terms, you don't actually do that. But let's say this is the key light, right? Key light is hitting him. That's our key. How do we just extend that but lower levels? You could do it up here. You're not gonna smush light back into him, because then it's like, you're losing all your interest. You don't want to do that. You want to fill, you want to wrap fill. I'm just fucking making terms up now. But that's definitely how I think about it. That's like why when you're outside, always, if the sun is here hitting our man, we do not want to bounce back from over here to smush it into him. We want to bounce from the same side as the sun. So edge, bounce back in, then neg, and you're away. What if you're hungry? Yeah, you can have a sandwich. You can have a sandwich. Okay. Peter Timberlake. Pause. Why didn't you look at my spot, man? I don't know. You are like into VFX? I'm not sure I follow, dude. But there's a lot of people that sent in spots I didn't get to. Maybe next time. Okay. Paul, ha, bad joke. Ah, yes, got you. Bounce keyside. Yes. For the love of Buddha. Bounce keyside. So in here, what is good, let's talk practicals. These things cool. I would probably lower the level on the lamp if this thing is at all possible to dim, because it looks quite hot. Same here. This is really hot. If you took that down a stop, I think it would feel more natural. You don't want it to compete with what's up here. This light appears to be brighter than what's on his face, and I would not want that. So I would say for practical setting the background, remember, stop, maybe 2 stops under. So this is where if you had your little light meter and you were pinging back here, and this read T, this is probably T4, and this you're probably looking at T14, yeah, maybe 3 stops, and you probably want it to be actually under. So you would want this to be T1 if we're doing spot metering. This is a better level. See how dim that is compared to up here? This is nice. Doesn't compete. This starts to compete because it's right in the middle of the frame. This is cool. Other things that would make this shot cool, different color temperature, right? So you're creating color contrast as well. You're not just having one orange wash across the entire thing. And you could probably do that. I mean, ideally, you'd want to do that with the fill. A lot of times, and that's becoming more popular now, is creating that fill, that wrapper fill with a slightly cooler or warmer color temperature, just to add some interest on the face. That's sort of getting quite high level. But you'll find it more and more, the stuff you look at, the high level stuff, it's constantly being wrapped or key wrapped with a different color temperature. Just slight, doesn't have to be much. You know, if you're shooting this at, this is say 4300, then you'd want a 5600 on the lamp. Okay, here we go. Same thing. Fill the, don't have time to light this whole thing up and have great ambient. Just put a light in the background. Now we're talking though. Now we got a good angle. Now we're bouncing or we're filling doesn't look like a bounce. This is a great example. And this should be your outdoor example. We could almost fucking put this on a billboard. This little face here, that is your anti-sun sandwich. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got it here in the frame. We've got light, source, hitting, hotter edge. But wait, where is this light on her face coming from, Patrick? If this lamp is behind, why does it feel so natural? It's because there's light coming this way. From the same side as the hot edge comes our key wrap. Now, it doesn't make it around to the other cheek. That's okay, right? We're pretty far away in this wide shot. So going to be a little bit more difficult to control over the what do they call this? The front, the bonnet, the hood of the boat, the bow. And then you've also got this little edge light that's happening, which is just adding interest. So you look at her face. I mean, that's an interesting image. It's compelling lighting. I like it. Again, we've got the same issues that we had before where the color is quite monotone in that we don't have any variations in the color. You got a little bit of a blue streak, but in here you got a little bit of shadow difference, a little blue in the shadows, which is nice. Ty's done a nice job there. And then, yeah, you've got this angle on him, which is nice. Probably, you know, you're losing this a little bit. You're losing that back edge a little bit, and the white shirt is not helping you. But it might be nice. Whatever's doing this, I maybe would have made bigger or panned left. So the lamp that's over here, maybe just pan it this way and miss left. So you get a little bit of this, but then you also get just that little bit of edge on them. And then in here, you know, again, nitpicking. This feels like we don't really need this information over here. So I would try and flag that just because there's so much level here that it starts to compete with our two people, which is where we want people to look. So you can imagine if we're trying to get people to look there, we want to have all eyes this way. So I would probably fight to take this down a little bit. Yeah, I understand. Yes, color contrast, flashback. I like it. I get it. Okay, next one. Here we go. This is the one where you set up and you go, fuck yeah, I nailed it. Feeling pretty good about this shot. And as you can see, wider, a little bit harder to manage all the steps, especially if we have a smaller crew. But as you go in, this is glorious, Weston. Well done. You got nice fall off in the background. You're using this cool thing in the foreground. Beautiful shape on her. Nice little edge. I will say, if I would be so bold, the only thing is this feels hotter than this, and it's probably not by much. It's probably like that looks like a quarter of a stop or a half stop at most. But I might play it the other way. I might play this a half stop up, and then wrap at the same level, and then this a half stop down. Okay, but we're really nitpicking now. But I like it. I like this, whatever's happening in the background here, that little bleed, you need that, right? You need those little pops of color in the background, of highlights in the background, because if it was all this, I mean, you do have a little bit of level there, a little variation, but you need this, right? That's what makes it interesting. That's what gives it depth, three-dimensional. This is doing a lot of the work, but to really tie it all together, right? You can get 1 or 2 or 3 things right, but it's when you get that 5 or 6, when you get lots of elements coming together in each frame, that's when things start to feel nuanced and interesting. And I think you've done a very good job there with that one. Let's go to the next one. Here we go. And we are back out on the water. Yes, the old open door trick. I like that. You just crack it in the background. That is, yeah, we're going to be talking about that in a podcast. Actually, maybe this week's breakdown. The power of the open door, open window, open curtain, always having things at the ready as quick as you can, even at the highest level. Sometimes it's the quick fixes that make things possible. Okay, This one, we're essentially in that same world. We're back outside. She's crying. And I think, Weston, you know exactly where I'm going here. If we've got the ability to drive this boat anywhere, in any direction, I don't know if she's even on the boat anymore, I would say just rotate her around, because there's a lot of level coming from back there. Rotate her around gives you more edge. You know, it wouldn't have to be much. You're talking 20 degrees. We rotate her around. You 4x off of here. That gives you hotter edge, and then wrapping around here. And then again, you can leak this way if you have the ability to put up a 4x4 floppy. But in this tight, you can get away with some very small things. So I would say just rotate her around, give us an edge, because it's very, I mean, this and this same levels. And I would try and fight to not have it the same level. But beautiful frame in terms of composition. Yeah, neg fill if you can fit it on the boat. But, you know, you can get around, you can always get around neg fill and bounce if you just think in ratios. You just have to constantly be thinking in ratios. Okay, how can I get more out of one side? That will affect the other side. How can I get less out of one side? That makes my other side stand out more. It's more just remembering we need that variance to keep things interesting. So, but nice frame, good composition, eyes in the right spot in the frame. You go on the near side eye for focus. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And is that the last one? Whoop, that is the last one. Uh-oh, DXL, bitches. That's fresh out of the can. I'm not supposed to show that. Tough to do anything on the boat when it goes for, yeah, exactly. They're always limited by locations and whatnot. Okay. Well, I think that's it. We got any questions? I think next week in the live stream, when I have the camera sorted, I think I'm going to do an issue or an episode on just money, just making cash, and the things that go into it, and what to look out for, and how much you can actually make in a month as a cinematographer, because I've had an interesting few months here, and which is in a good way. And I think a lot of people would benefit from understanding where the money gets made, how it gets made, how much you can actually make, and what it takes, and then where it all goes. So maybe that will be next week for the Patreon live stream. And many thanks for supporting the show. You'll notice that there was no MusicBed sponsor this week. It would be advantageous if you're a Patreon supporter to reach out to the MusicBed and let them know that you noticed they were not sponsoring the podcast, because they're umming and awing at the moment whether or not they're going to pick it up again. Thanks so much for the review, man. Very helpful. The podcast and your work has been a big inspiration for me and helped train the eye. Well, thank you, Weston. You're on the right track. This is some very cool stuff. As I said, in terms of spec ad, just from a production point of view, you've done well. You picked something super. You picked a subject and something that you could turn into something cool, much like Paul was talking about in the big podcast this week. It's getting the resources and then finding the angle that's going to allow you to maximize those resources. You know, you make those NAB connections, you get everything sorted. You don't go out and film, try and film 15 people having some Pepsi commercial. You keep it very tight and limited. You choose the time of day. You're outside, natural light, cheaper. You're in this real confined workshop space for lighting, cheaper, always good. So much appreciated there for sharing that. And if you didn't get your spot featured, maybe we'll do, I don't know. It's an interesting time, because this July, I shot 17 days with about 4 Tech Scout days in there. And August has been even worse in terms of the amount of time that I've been shooting. So I haven't had as much time as I would want to, and the gear hasn't been around for these live streams. But I'm going to try and, I don't know, maybe ramp it up. But I don't know, it's all about finding time to make these things happen. And I'm just know that if it isn't as polished as it has been in the past, it's only because I'm trying to rush through and still provide some value, right? Because I'm learning stuff like this fucking DXL thing. I'm learning new shit all the time. I'm just trying to get through it all, trying to go, okay, what's going to help people? What's going to help me? And the biggest thing from that shoot, the biggest takeaway that I can give to you is that without those tools, you just can't do that. That's a fact. You just cannot get that look. So you can't beat yourself up over it. Sometimes it's the fucking tools. Okay, thank you for all your knowledge you drop so well. Slightly off topic. This is from Paul. How do I get better at knowing all the various lighting options, grip gear, and terminology? You start off with whatever you know now, all the stuff that you know now, and you work with people that are better than you, which means every grip and every gaffer that you work with as you climb the ranks, hopefully they're more skilled than you are. If you're picking people that are less skilled at those jobs than you are, you're doing it wrong. So I would say try and hire the best people that you can for every job. And then, I mean, I don't pretend that I know. Now I know. But when I was starting out, I didn't pretend that I knew, but I didn't say I didn't know. I would just say, I guess the solution was I was always so researched at the beginning that if they didn't have a plan, I could easily tell them exactly how to do it. It wouldn't have been the most efficient, and I probably would have wasted time, but we would have got there in the end. So I would have been sacrificing time and maybe the wrong instruments for the job, but it would have gotten it across. I would say as you go, you'll just learn, okay, like for outside, do you like highlight or do you like half soft frost? I know what I like. I like highlight. Half soft frost is the go. When you're in Los Angeles, that's just the thing that people go to. Okay. I mean, I can take that as long as it doesn't look like shit, because if it looks like shit and I asked for the highlight and you brought the half soft frost, we're going to have problems because you're going to have to put it up again. You're going to look like a dipshit. So I'm happy to take those suggestions. I'm happy for people to have their own stamp on things as long as it's better than what I asked for. And all of that gear, all of those things, I still speak in really broad terms, and you can especially do that in the beginning, and you let the other people fill it in. And if it doesn't look like what you want it to, remember, as the cinematographer, you are the creative direction. People are looking to you to come up with the look. The people that are actually going to go out and implement the look, that's your team, and it's your job to communicate with them. Not so much, you don't have to tell them exact lamps. And this is where I say earlier during this live stream, as you're starting out, it's actually harder because you're working with less experienced people with shittier gear. As you go up, it gets easier. So I would say you don't have to learn all those things. Just learn a few of the basics, learn the diffusion materials, and know that a general rule of thumb, the principle is the bigger is better. You never go, fuck, I went too big. Like I shouldn't have gone that big. Bigger is always better. Okay. Are you going to Camera Image Blue 4 Delta? Blue 4 Delta. I don't know if your name is just the one I remember the most, or if you're just the most frequent watcher and participator in the live stream, but I like it. Thank you, Blue 4 Delta. Am I going to Camera Image? It looks likely, unless I get a job that overlaps with those days. It looks likely. It would be fun. But then again, I don't really have anything to show. I'd rather go with something to show. Okay, Paul, I'm guessing most of it is just learning it all by experience, but is there any suggestions for resource to reference as to look like less of an idiot when talking to gaffers and grips? Well, I think I just pointed out the key to not looking like an idiot is remembering that it's not your job to know all that stuff. So you don't have to look like an idiot. As long as you don't say, we want to go with something heavy here, so let's, bring out quarter grid. You don't say that stuff. You just say, we're looking to go with something heavy. And then you sort of look at them, and they go, okay, what were you thinking? So I don't know, what do you got in the truck? And then they say, they're going to list the heavy things. They're not going to list the light things, are they? Because you just said heavy. So even if you don't fucking know, you just say, I don't know, I think we should go with that overhead light above the boardroom table. We want to knock the shit out of the level, and we just want that softness to go everywhere, so let's use something heavy. And they go, well, what are you thinking? You go, I don't know, what's on the truck? They go, well, we've got, fucking magic cloth. We've got full grid. What are you thinking? Oh, magic cloth. And then the magic cloth goes up, and in your mind you go, yeah, that looks pretty good, magic cloth. I think that actually worked. And then you remember. And then that's how it works. Okay. Yeah. Okay, everybody. That's going to do it for this week on the live stream. We will see you next week for a breakdown. I think we're going to be doing people in cars, I would imagine. If not, we'll find something else to do. But that's it. And then we've got a fucking bunch of great interviews coming up. If you liked this week's podcast, you're going to really like all the stuff coming up because it only gets better from here. And thanks for checking it out. And we'll see you in the next episode of the podcast. Again, if you have a second, just talk to those music bed people, please. Okay, bye for now.